And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I'd love it if you click that button. Saw this online for $44.90 and I thought, you know what, we can do this a lot cheaper. So there's the items you're going to need: some Mod Podge, a jar, some black paint, and that printable there is a free printable. I will have the link down below in my description box. And I'm showing you how, this is tissue paper, and I'm showing you how I just taped it on top of computer paper. It was that simple, and it goes through the printer just fine. So far I've had really good luck with it. And if there is a little ink splotches here and there, I don't worry about it, because usually my stuff is kind of distressed, so you don't notice it anyway. Or you could literally tear off that ink blob and it's so thin no one would notice, if that is a concern for you. So far I've been really pleased with this method. And I'm going to take the Mod Podge now and paint this jar, and I will be painting the whole jar because the black paint is acrylic and I want that to be able to stick down onto something. So a lot of you know this trick already. You paint your glass with Mod Podge and that gives it a nice surface for a cheap acrylic paint to stick on. So that's what we're doing right now. And I'm showing you here how simple it is to get the wrinkles out when you work with tissue paper too. I am lightly rubbing a dry finger over this, just lightly, and every single wrinkle just flattens down immediately. There's no wrinkles anywhere. And if there, well, I shouldn't say no, because if you really look close with like a magnifying glass or something, you can see some wrinkles, but I mean, it's so minuscule that it is such a great method to get an image on. I think I'm going to be using this more often than computer paper for sure. So now I'm just taking the black acrylic paint and I'm going to go ahead and give this jar one coat of black paint. And if you noticed in the photo of the original piece that we're duping today, it has twine wrapped around the top. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. I'm going to go ahead and put a little, or rather me, I'm going to go ahead and put a dot of hot glue, and we're going to wrap this up with twine. So something that really excited me with this DIY that caught me off guard is if you have your jar near sunlight, it doesn't have to be direct sunlight, it illuminates beautifully, and I show it in one of the final photos in the final reveal. You'll see it in a minute. And now I'm just taking some of this gingham plaid ribbon, making a simple bow. It was just a loop glued together with more of the ribbon in the center wrapped around it. And I'm going to glue it down just for a little extra embellishment on top of this jar. And then I'm taking some fairy lights. If you're interested in the ones I'm using, they're down below in the description box. There will be a link. They're kind of nice and golden, and they're perfect for autumn. Of course, what would the season be without a coffee can craft? Here's a free printable I designed, and it's down below in my description box if you'd like to print it up. And of course, I didn't forget you coffee lovers. I made one for you too. This is a coffee can from Walmart. As far as I know, this is their store brand, so it should be available to everyone who lives by a Walmart. Here is the paint I used. It's a paint primer mix. So I took it outside, gave it one coat, let it dry for about 3 hours. It was in the evening, so it was colder temperature, so it was very dry. I noticed spray paint dries better when it's cold. And then I'm just going to give it one coat of the orange acrylic paint from Dollar Tree. These are those little styrofoam things that come inside packages. I don't know what they're called, but I thought, you know, you never know if you're going to need this, something like this for crafting. So I kept mine, and I'm using it now to start my polka dots on this can. I start doing the back side before I put the front of the image on, because I didn't want to mess up it takes a long time sometimes for Mod Podge to dry. So I didn't want it to be tacky where my finger ruined it from holding it and trying to put the polka dots on. So I started with the back side of this, and I do have to use a brush to make more perfect circles and to touch up the center because there's a little bit of air bubbles in it from tapping up and down with that foam piece. And now I'm taking some Mod Podge and we're going to start gluing that front label down. Now this time I do a really thin, thorough coat of Mod Podge. I didn't go Mod Podge happy, although it didn't make too much of a difference the last time I did that. It's just you have to deal with more wrinkles, so definitely less is better. And you just saw me spray the back of that paper with a little bit of water. That's because the sponge I normally use to press my imagery down isn't as wet as I want it to be, so that's another quick way to get your paper wet. I was in the middle of my project and I didn't want to get up and leave it to go wet the sponge, so I did the little water bottle trick instead. But you do have to be careful with that because it can make your ink run. You're just adding more moisture to that print. You can spray the back of your imagery with a clear varnish. If you're not worried about it yellowing, you can do it with hairspray. It might yellow after a few years, just that's a heads up. And here's a very quick sped up tutorial of the lid I'm going to use for this coffee can. If you'd like to see it in slower detail with more instruction, I will go ahead and link that video down below in my description box, and you'll also see it as a card during this part too, so you can click on that in the upper right hand corner. But this is the lid that I'm going to use, and I made it to look kind of like the top of a pumpkin. So and anyway, I take a black painter's pen and I go ahead and go around all of these circles because I do want more perfection. I mean, you definitely could make them where they're, like I said before, kind of not perfect. That would still look cute, but that wasn't the look I wanted to go for. And I made a raffia bow this year. We're going to glue it on top, and that's it. I always love these coffee can crafts. They're some of my favorites, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. For this craft, I'm using a wooden Dollar Tree pumpkin and the Dollar Tree little plastic fake wrought iron fence there. You can actually get that at Home Depot too, and Lowe's. I didn't know that, but it's a little bit more expensive. I think you get 12 for $19.99, so it's a little more expensive, but if you're desperate, it's good to know. And I'm just giving it a quick coat of the Dollar Tree orange acrylic paint again, and I'm using the same exact form. I bought like 4 of these wooden pumpkins because I think they're so cute and I have some good ideas. But I'm using it to make those little lines on the pumpkin. They're great templates for that. And then I'm just using a straight ruler to do the center line. Using some apple barrel paint in the color of burnt umber, I'm going to go ahead and paint a stem. Here you'll see me wiping most of the paint off the brush, and the paint on the stem has dried just a little bit. You know, it's not slopping wet, and I just kind of, I don't know if you see I'm dry brushing it downwards where I kind of missed it, and it softens up that line and blurs it. It makes it look more like a real pumpkin stem, so that's a nice little trick. And then using the same method with my brush, I just go around the edge of this little pumpkin to give him a little extra dimension and like a nice little frame just to make him pop a little bit more. And I like that softness. It almost looks like fur on the edge of him. I just think that looks really, really nice. And I did write the words trick or treat on the front of this pumpkin in pencil. You're just seeing the tail end of it here where I'm doing the final T, and I used a ruler this time to help me out. It came out cute. And I'm going to take a brown Sharpie and trace those little lines I made earlier on the pumpkin. And then after that, I'm going to use a paintbrush to paint the word or the words trick or treat. I always opt for the brush when I want the words to look kind of rough or more amateur, I guess, more homemade. And in this particular case, I'm kind of making the edges, wherever I stop my brush stroke, I kind of fade it off so it looks like the words are not, they do it to make words look creepy, but it almost looks like it's melting like wax, or, you know, if you ran water on the paint and it started dripping off, it's supposed to have that look. I'm trying to anyway. Here's a technique I showed last year and I got so much positive feedback that I thought I'd better show it up close again. I'm using some sharp tweezers. They are the really pointy ones, but you can use any sharp tool that you have, and I'm scratching into the stem to make it look more realistic. This is a great method for that. And now comes time to start cutting up this little fence, and I start by cutting off the bottom pieces, and of course eventually we get to this part here where I have two separate pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and glue those together. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my pumpkin and glue him down. And I'm making this for my daughter's house. It is going to be outside on their door, so I am reinforcing it on the back with lots of hot glue. And now comes time for the messy bow. I love the messy bow, and they are absolutely perfect for Halloween. And I'm just taking different ribbon that I think goes good with the theme of Halloween and putting them together. And the top one's going to be a loop. So I did the messy bow for the bottom 3 ribbons, and then I did a loop for the top ribbon. Now I'm just tying it in the center, and then you just kind of pull everything apart and make your bow look the way you want it to. You do, you know, here I am, I'm just kind of fluffing it out. And the nice thing I like about the messy bows, if you make a boo-boo, you'll see it in a minute here, you can add extra ribbon in between. It's no big deal because they're not loops. So I'm just trimming the pieces that were hanging, but here I go. I'm taking that little extra piece there, no one will ever know, and I'm just sticking it in between the other ribbon because it's not quite, you know, the colors aren't separated enough. I wanted them to definitely have variety in between each layer, and I do that on both sides and just add a little extra ribbon in there. And then I add some fall leaves on the top, and now I'm taking a little yellow flower from the Dollar Tree in their fall section. I'm going to glue that at the top for a pop of color and to cover where that leaf didn't quite go all the way under the bow. And that's what we have for the top so far. Now here's the thing with this craft, and it was driving me crazy. When you cut these in half, the other side is so thin compared to the original because obviously it's half. And I did not like that. I just thought it looked cheap and flimsy. So I'm going ahead and cutting those off. And also I thought, you know, it didn't look spooky enough. To me, it almost gave off more of the garden vibe. I wanted it to definitely give off like the wrought iron fence around a graveyard vibe. So I thought these have got to go, and it definitely helps. When I was done, I realized that looks like a big stem on the pumpkin. Wouldn't that be cute if you didn't have the bottom part? So if you don't have the full fence, you could definitely use just 2 of these and make like a big stem on the top of the pumpkin and decorate it. I thought that looked awesome. You could even use a bigger pumpkin. That would be a totally cute door decor piece. And now I'm using 4 strands from the Dollar Tree hula skirt. I twisted them around and around, and I'm tying them on the back to be my hanger. But I just thought this was such a simple, cute statement piece for Halloween. For this DIY, you're going to need a witch's boot template, some material of your choice. I'm using an old man's shirt. Oh, wait, my husband wouldn't like that. I'm using an old shirt of a man. Oh, you know what I mean. Anyway, you just cut out that template, you trace it onto your cloth, and then you fold your cloth in half so that the fold side is the back of the boot, and you cut it out so that it opens up like this. So from my years of doing crafts and sewing, I knew that it would be really difficult to stuff this properly up in that upper pointed curled toe area there if I glued it together first and then stuffed the polyfiber fill in there. And I'm just using old stuffing from a pillow. So I go ahead and I stuff it while it's still open, and then I glue it together, and I don't worry if some of the little stuffing is sticking out. As I go, I kind of shove it in there, and if little pieces are sticking out, or even if any glue oozes over, you can trim that off as you go. So here's where I have a big blob of hot glue that went over, and I'm just trimming it off, and I'm going around the entire little witch's boot now to make sure we don't have any odds and ends hanging over the edge. This is a trim that's left over from a table runner I got at Ross a long time ago, and it just started to kind of yellow and look old, and my decor style changed, and I just thought this would be absolutely perfect for the trim on this boot. Some of you who watch my channel may remember the French country video that I did. This was the material, see-through like scarf material that I cut up and used for that mirror that hung, the little Dollar Tree mirror that I hung on the wall backwards, and it had all that soft, beautiful flowing ribbon hanging off of it. This was the trim from that. So when I say look around your house and use what you have, you'd be so surprised what's old and you're ready to give away, and it would be a beautiful crafting supply. Now I'm just using some black paint from Apple Barrel Paint, and these are little spray bottles from the Dollar Tree. I just add some water in till we get it nice and fluid, and I'm going to pour it into the spray bottle. And I'm going to spray this boot black. Now you can do this ahead of time, but this is the Holly way of doing things fast and easy. And I did, you won't, unbelievable when I look back, but I did like over 200 coffee filter roses once for a wedding using this method, and there was like no way I was going to paint 200 coffee filter roses. So I just got a big spray bottle like you use for a garden. I mixed up a nice creamy yellow color, and I sprayed all of the roses because that was the theme of the wedding. It was all like creams, and it was perfect. So you may have noticed that I also spray painted the inside where the stuffing is to make that dark. This little booty dried in about half an hour because I have a vertical basket that I stood it up in with vertical bars, and I put a fan in front of it, and it was bone dry in half an hour. And now I'm just dry brushing black paint. You don't water down this part. You just use regular black paint and dry brush here and there, and you hit the areas where the hot glue oozed out because that will not pick up the color of the paint you spray. Okay, so we need something to stuff in these booties just like we stuff Christmas stockings, and I decide to go ahead and make a little black kitty out of craft sticks. Just using more of the black acrylic paint from Apple Barrel to paint this little guy, and now we're drawing some eyes on him. I'm just going to make them round and really simple. You'll see I just use a white painter pen, and then I'm going to use a black painter pen, and then we're going to make the cutest whiskers ever out of Dollar Tree twine. All you do is wrap the twine around 2 fingers and then tie it in the middle and cut the edges, and voila, you have cute whiskers. I'm really loving how vintage and primitive this little witch boot is coming along. So I decided to take some Spanish moss and put it on the top, and you can see me there pushing my fingers into the polyfiber fill. I did have to break that apart to make a little hole for my little kitten because I couldn't get my cat in there. And then I broke a little bit of the wood off the pick there because it was a little bit too long. It was difficult to get down. And then I took this permanent marker in brown, colored the stem brown, added a little hot glue on top of the pumpkin so I could add some more Spanish moss. And then we're going to take the Walmart twine, which is a really good deal, by the way. If you come across that twine, make sure you pick it up because it just goes forever. And it's a lot thicker than the Dollar Tree, and it is cheaper per yard in the end. And I tied it in a knot, in a loop, and we're gluing it on the inside of the booty there so we can hang this up on the wall. And then I decide, lastly but not least, this doesn't quite have enough of the Halloween flair here. This is a witch's boots. We have to do a little jack-o'-lantern, and I absolutely love the way that this came out. If you had fun today, don't forget to leave me a big thumbs up on this video. It really does help it get seen on YouTube. And until the next time, breathe deep, fret not, and do things that make you happy.